Alright, today I'm doing a simple Kerbal Space Program video. All I'm doing is to check to see how high a mainsail can fly based on how many orange tanks I have. Sometimes I feel like doing math and doing, more complicated analysis, but today I just feel like seeing how much weight one of these things can lift so I can plan for my rockets and I don't overload them. So I want to see how much weight I can put on here with a minimal craft and see how high they go. So I've got a pretty simple ship here that's unmanned. And the reason I'm trying to do this is because I'm asparagus staging some of my ships, and I don't want them to essentially have fuel the engine is just struggling to lift. I want to make sure I have a net gain. Here we go. Alright, so what I did was I did a split screen between 1, 2, 3, and 4 orange tanks, and then I increased the speed of the recordings probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 times to kind of shorten it up and keep it a little less boring. So you can see by the altimeters at the top of each screen how high each one's getting. They're not necessarily the same scale. Some of them had much longer flights than others, so their video playback was sped up more. You'll see towards the end, after the engines kick out, I zoom out to see their overall orbits. Alright, so the final result for this guy is about 16,000 meters. I'm sorry, 1.6 million meters. Alright, and that was expected to be very high, so now I'm going to just do 2 of these orange tanks and see how it fares. Alright, well the 2 tanks didn't slow down as much as I thought. See here, we're actually exiting Kerbin's sphere of influence and orbiting around the sun, which kinda makes my test more difficult, but whatever. The orbit was 17.2 billion meters around the sun. Now you can see that it's still on net gain. Alright, on to the third one. So with 3 tanks, we've left the Earth's sphere of influence again, which you can see there by that dropped point, the Kerbin escape. And we're now in orbit around the sun. It's about 17.9 billion meters. So we still got a gain over 2, but it's not necessarily that large. It makes me question if it's even worth putting the third tank on there. With 4 tanks, I had a flight that was truly grueling. I pretty much wandered off or stared into space for a while. So overall, it decreased, went to about 16.6 billion meters. So you're definitely just taking extra fuel, weight, and wasting money when you add that 4th tank. The first 1 tank rocket had a total orbit of 1.5 million meters. The 2 tank was 17.2 billion meters, and that was actually around the sun. The 3 tank was 17.9 billion meters around the sun, and the 4 tank was 16.6 billion meters around the sun. So you can see there's some sort of loss with the 4 tank between the 3. I didn't run 2.5 or 3.5 since this was a course test. Alright, so you might be wondering what the point of all this crap I'm doing is. And the point is that I want to be able to put engines underneath alternate stacks. So in this case I would have, if I was doing this for real, I'd have a mainsail with 2 outer ones, and then I'd use these tank stacks to eject. So since I'm not really doing that for real, I'm just going to drain these tanks in sequential order using fuel lines. go. It's ugly, but it works. And I'm going to set up the ejections so that I drop the other two first. Come on. There we go. So now I will kick off these purely fuel tanks, and then since we're pretending a little bit, I'll kick off these side pretend mainsail tanks, and that'll get me even further. Now, since I'm trying to follow my little experiment, these half tanks, two of these weigh the exact same and have the same fuel capacity as a large orange one. I'm just doing this for symmetry, because if I put orange tanks on the side of this and dropped them off, the thing would go absolutely haywire. So now, assuming this thing doesn't fail because I did something stupid, here we go. I've sped this up again. I had to play with the audio since whenever you speed up the video, you lose all the audio. I spliced in the separator, or I should say decoupler sounds, just so you can, you know, at least get some of the experience even though it's sped up. So you can see I kicked off those auxiliary tanks. If this was a real 3-engine rocket, those would have been just fuel, because they would have been depleted quite quickly. Just checking my overall orbit height, and the engine's about, or the tanks are about done, so now I'm dropping those two. So I'm back to a plain old boring rocket again. Just kind of zooming out a bit so I can see how far away I am. You can see my orbit is drastically getting bigger. Alright, so this thing is finally empty. For some reason, I don't fully understand why at this point. Oh. When you use fuel lines, sometimes you use more oxidizer than liquid fuel, or vice versa, so, whatever. The thing stopped working. It's done. If you look at the orbital map, dropping those dead tanks gave me a considerable further distance. Now, how much more I actually gained by dropping them, it's, you know, hard to say without more weight. Since I'm doing this sun orbit test, it's not as useful, but you can see here I've got 23.4 billion roughly meters. Now just to put that into perspective, when I had 3 tanks it was 17.9, and with 4 it was 16.6. So again, this isn't linear, some sort of exponential that I don't know the equation of, but you can kind of see how staging these things like this and kicking them off would be quite effective. So now I know that when I make my medium rocket using these kind of engines and these kind of nozzles, I can stack, you know, put one of these here with the mainsail on the end and put 2 oranges in the sides, or, you know, put 2 oranges in the middle, however I want to do it. But I can safely put my actual design, well, you know what, I'll just show you. So this is what I will most likely do. Throw this garbage away, get rid of this, grab an orange tank. So I know I can safely do a 3-to-1 ratio. I don't want to get that high, because then I will have to be burning longer and have all these other problems. And I will also be less efficient at a certain point. Come on. There we go. I forgot to do symmetry. Alright. So I would do, obviously, much more refined than this, because this is going to absolutely break apart. So now, I know I can safely do this. So realistically, I got my 2 centrals, my 2 alternates, and I should say my 4 alternates, and my 4 drops. So for a total of 3 engines through my little testing, I think I can safely do 9 tanks. Alright, it's been a long day again, so I can't do math. So 3 engines, so that's 9 tanks, because I can say build up to 3. So I got 6, 7, 8, and not being an idiot now, I've got 9 total. So the idea is, and realistically, if I was going to do this properly, if I didn't tear my rocket apart. Alright. So again, ignore how crude this is. Come on, you piece of crap. There you go. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 in the halves. So, what this will let me do is I will kick off more the what we call dry weight once these are depleted. So when I set up the actuation, or I should say the ejection, I will eject these 2 big stacks first, get rid of that extra weight, and then be burning these, and I would use fuel lines as well to connect these outer ones to the main one. Alright, so what I've just thrown together here is probably more similar to what I'll actually do. Might do something else with this middle tank, I'm not sure, depending on how the rocket builds up. But I'd have some alternate tanks that would have slightly more fuel, so these would get drained first. And the nice thing is when you have fuel piped here into here, you'll have all 3 engines burning off this outer fuel. So realistically, when you saw how staging and dropping weight worked, depending on how big my payload is, I could add another set of orange ones. These are going to get burned through real quick because we only have 3 mainsails going full blast. So that's this little video. I was playing around with PlayClaw to get this to, get a feel for it. Bandicam wasn't working out perfectly. I'm trying to figure out which software I like so I can buy it. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it.